Hi, everyone. I'm glad you're here because today's episode is a doozy. Today, I have three stories that nearly shattered everyone involved as they tried to rationalize what happened to them. Just wait until you hear what you're about to hear. So, if you're enjoying the channel, don't be invisible. Let us know you're out there and smash that subscribe button so we can always be together. Thanks. Now, let's get into the stories. Thank you for your videos. They've helped me so much because until now, I felt really alone in this. But now, I know that what happened to me isn't uncommon. I know I'm not crazy, and there are so many more things like it out there. Things that others have seen. But I'm writing to request your help. I've been telling my story for years, but nobody believes that it was what it was. They all say that it's impossible. But I know that I'm not crazy, and I saw it. It happened about a year ago at my small local college in rural Pennsylvania. The day it happened was an otherwise typical day. I went straight to the library after class. It was fall, leaves changing, crisp breezes, and lots of apple spice everywhere you look. Anyway, it was late when I finally left the library that day. The walk back home was about 20 minutes or so, but only around 10 minutes if I cut through the little forest path from the college. I was tired that night from working on a big assignment, and so, of course, I chose the 10-minute shortcut back home. Any other day I would have been fine. Nothing terrible ever happened there. I regret making that choice now, though. But you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20. About 3 minutes into the woods, I heard this awful, terrible sound of hammering on the trees all around me, as if someone was using every last ounce of their strength to slam rocks into the wood until it cracked in the air, sounding like gunshots, followed by a noise almost like an ape whooping. Usually the woods smelled like, woods. But on this day, it smelled like somebody had gotten too drunk and used the path as their urinal. It reeked so badly that I thought somebody must have thrown garbage on the path, so I need to describe exactly how it smelled. It was musty garbage, urine, and a wet dog. That would be the best way to describe it. I know that I should have turned around after I heard the knocking, but I was just in such a rush to get home, and I didn't want to do any backtracking. Plus, I never in a million years thought that it would be what it turned out to be. At the halfway point along the path is when I saw this thing, this creature. It was standing about 8 feet tall with dark reddish brown, what I can only describe as fur, covering its entire body. It was still a way down the path, in front of me. From this distance, it looked like somebody had taken one of those weird hunting suits and put animal fur all over it. It was a weirdly tall somebody with massive shoulders that were hunched together, and it had the most insane framework that I've ever seen. It was just honed like no other body that I've ever seen. I can remember some of the gym rats in campus showing off, but this thing, whatever it was nothing like that. This was just a wall of fur and muscle. The creature didn't see me until I started to move again. I thought I was being quiet enough not to get caught. I was wrong. The next thing I knew, it was turning around and looking at me with those soulless, beady black eyes that seemed to bore into my skull. When our eyes met, I swear it felt like my head was full of pressure. This thing's face was hairless, much like an ape. It had a strange cone head with a strong brow ridge, big protruding lips that didn't seem like they could fully close around the big white teeth. The thing was coming at me, and in fact it was now within an arm's reach of me, and then I finally seemed to snap back to reality. The disgusting smells I had caught a whiff of earlier were now so intense that my eyes were burning and watering. The musky scent of its body was tickling my nose now too. I closed my eyes, wishing it all to go away, and I could barely open them when I felt one of its oversized hands touch me. But luckily, I could now hear another group of students who were also coming our way. Miraculously, the sound of the ground crunching below their feet and their loud voices were enough to scare the creature away. I opened my eyes to realize that it had stopped approaching and I watched as it ran off in the opposite direction. I bolted once I could no longer see it, running nonstop until I couldn't breathe. My chest was burning and the scent of urine was still fresh in my memory. In the end, it took me 15 minutes to get home. I don't even remember walking the rest of the way. My mind was too focused on making sense of what I had just experienced. The smell was gone when I returned to the path the next day with a friend. I had told him about it, and I wanted to go back to see if I was crazy or not. But no signs of what I'd seen or what had happened remained. Not even a footprint was left in the mud. My friend was kind, but tried to come up with a more realistic explanation when I told him about it. But even if I imagined it all, which I didn't, I still will never go back on that path in the dark, and I definitely won't step on that trail alone. No one I know has had a similar experience. Do you have any suggestions on what you think I saw or what happened? I'd like some answers. It would help me to find closure on what was the scariest night of my life. Thank you again for doing such a groundbreaking show and allowing me to share my experience. Thanks for listening to my story. I know it's going to sound pretty cliche, but the truth is that this is something that has really stuck with me my whole life. Kind of traumatized me in a way. It's not like I got hurt or anything, but it always feels kind of scary to talk about, even now. This whole series of events took place when I was in high school, quite a few years ago now. I still remember it clear as day, though. You see, my family and I had lived in the same spot pretty much all of our lives, but my dad got a really good job opportunity down in Montana. We moved there, and it was an easy enough adjustment since I was kind of a shy kid anyway. I spent too much time with my internet friends to really care about the ones I had in school. But since I didn't know anybody, I didn't have much to do after classes, other than sit alone at home waiting for my parents to get home from work. The first few weeks were completely normal, nothing of note except for the occasional creaky floorboard or spooky-sounding draft. I was pretty comfortable outdoors since my family used to own a small farm. And at the time, we still had a couple of animals. I would take care of them from time to time when my parents weren't around, and I didn't mind too much either since I kind of liked the company. There was one day, though, when I came home from school to a downright massacre. My parents had told me that they weren't able to feed the chickens that we kept in the back before they both headed out for the day. So, just check up on them when you get home from school, they told me. And yes, I did check, but it was definitely too late. There was a mix of blood and feathers splattered and sprayed everywhere in the coop, unlike anything I'd ever seen before. The thing that really got me about that was the amount of gore, because in the past we've definitely had similar things happen where wild animals attack and sometimes get our chickens. But most of the time there would be some blood in the trail and the animal would drag the chicken away to eat it, or the animal would carry it away, or there would be a carcass with a small pool of blood. But instead, this time, the entirety of the left half of the coop was a bloodbath. I don't want to get too into the nitty-gritty, but I will tell you this, I haven't eaten chicken again. Seriously. Like I said, we were a farm family, so we treated our livestock very respectfully and very seriously. When this happened, my mother was very torn up about it, and my dad was downright pissed. He said that it would be his new personal mission to figure out whatever it was that did that to the chickens. And honestly, he kind of got obsessive over it. Then again, though, we didn't want to lose any more animals. He set up this pretty intricate security system meant to capture footage of anything the motion sensors detected. Plus, he put a special lock on the coop door. Very high-tech stuff. I had a pretty decent view of the back where the coop was through my bedroom window, so in the evenings I'd also take a peek or two out of curiosity. And that's how I got a good look at it, or him, one night. I was getting ready for bed and some gut instinct or feeling told me to go and look out the window. When I did, I noticed that the bushes behind the chicken coop were kind of rustling. I knew it was some kind of an animal, and I was interested, so I kept watching. And that's when I saw the beast, a monster, a creature I couldn't explain. This was no standard coyote or wolf or anything of the sort. It came out through the bushes and it stared at the coop from a distance. Now all of the cameras were pointed at the coop, so none of this was actually caught on video. Likely story, I know, but this did happen. And then this wolf thing, this monster, it was so bizarre. It had the head of a dog, clear as day, but its torso and general upper body were so disgustingly human-like. It was covered in hair top to toe. But the weirdest part was that the eyes on the head were also incredibly human. It was like a really messed up version of a Twilight werewolf or something. So this was it, the bit that really scared me, the bit that convinced me that this thing wasn't just a wild animal. The thing began approaching the coop, clearly with intent, and then it stopped. It stopped just a few feet short of the general area, and then it was looking up at the cameras. This thing genuinely recognized that it would be captured on video and stopped right in its tracks, like it understood. And then as it began to back away, it stood up on its hind legs. At this particular point, I took only a second's glance before fearfully turning away and ducking down where I knew it couldn't see me. I thankfully held my breath, so I didn't scream or anything. Lord knows I could have. When I watched this monster standing on its two back legs, it had stood up to a height that nearly topped the trees in the yard. Definitely 7, maybe 8 feet, which again, not a characteristic of any animal that I know of. And it looked eerie, so foreign. I only looked for a second, but as I said, I know I'm not mistaken. I'm convinced this thing is real. This was some kind of an encounter because our chickens were left alone from then on. Completely. Even though I've been looking behind my shoulder ever since, and out the window every night, I've never seen that creature again. Not anywhere. And you know what? Interesting or otherwise, I hope I never do. When I was a teenager, we lived in a very small town in Idaho. It wasn't very far from Mountain Home Air Force Base. We lived on the south side of town, and there was some BLM land across the street from our house, and a landfill not far away, just up the road. My siblings and I spent a lot of time running around the hills in the area. One thing is that there were a lot of sheep herders in the hills to the south, and we liked to follow them around. One night, my mom was just coming home from grocery shopping, and I heard her call to me inside from the driveway. But the tone of her voice sounded weird to me. I was the oldest and my brother and sister were already in bed, so I wondered what she needed. I could tell that she was concerned about something bigger than just her trying to get me to come and bring in the groceries. My first thought was that she had spotted a coyote nearby because they'd been plaguing us lately. I went outside running and she pointed to something that was just hovering south and east of us, out over the landfill. She was like, "Can you tell what the heck that is?" I was familiar with most types of aircraft. I'd been attending every air show I could with my grandfather since I was a toddler, and my dad worked in aerospace as a machinist. The thing she was pointing at made a noise, like a loud but distant vacuum cleaner. For example, this was not the kind of noise you would expect to hear out of a helicopter hovering at that range. I'd seen plenty of helicopters, and it definitely was not that. And we grew up around airplanes, both civilian and military. This thing was not moving, and it appeared to be about the size of a school bus. It was hard to say exactly what shape it was, but I'm pretty sure it was triangular, and it was giving off this strange glow. The light was like a muted green, and it was pulsating in waves. It kind of looked like when the surface of a pond is disturbed by a stone. It was just hovering there, and it seemed to be casting that glow down onto something below it. After we stood out there for a few minutes, it then started to move, really slowly. And then the noise got a little louder, but not what you would expect from something that large that was hovering and moving slowly. The thing traced the line of the road, north, near our home, and then we lost sight of it as it passed the little hill at the end of our road. We walked around the east side of the house to try and pick it up visually as it passed the end of our row of houses. And then we saw it follow the road, about 50 to 60 feet above the ground. It still wasn't making a lot of noise, but then literally, in the blink of an eye, the light went from down the road in front of us to hovering over the lights across the valley that were illuminating the ski runs way off in the distance. A map will tell you that this was a little over 35 miles away. The crazy thing is that at that point, there was no noise. It was just silent, yet instant acceleration. The thing moved 30-something miles in a fraction of a second. We tracked it the whole time, not believing what we were seeing. It then hovered over the ski area for about half a second, and then it shot straight up at about the same speed with which it crossed the valley. Then we lost sight of it in the star field as it went straight up from the mountain. The stars are always bright at night in that section of Idaho. I remember watching as it went up. It lost that glow and then turned to a vivid green that got brighter and brighter. It kind of resembled a firework that didn't blow up, but it went much faster and much higher. The next morning on the bus, I told the kids from the end of the row of houses about what my mom and I had seen. They made fun of me, and it made me the butt of jokes for over the next day or so. Also, I was kind of a strange, nerdy kid and pretty much a social outcast. The subject did not come up again until maybe a year later when I guess I got a little cooler and I ended up being friends with one of those kids from the bus. He ended up confessing to me that he, his brother, and mom and dad had all seen the same thing that we had, but he had been too embarrassed to admit it in front of everybody on the bus after the way they all acted towards me. And his parents had also told him not to talk to anybody about it, because people would say they were crazy. To give you an idea of the timeline, this was the early 2000s. And ever since then, I've since pursued a career as an intelligence analyst, and I've been granted privileged access to confidential data concerning aircraft and other military equipment from all developed nations. As an imagery analyst in the U.S. Army intelligence, my primary focus was on ground, sea, and air order of battle. I had to know as much about enemy and friendly hardware as possible. I had to file accurate reports for command and to understand what it was that I was looking at. I'm telling you this for a reason. Nothing moves the way that thing moved. Nothing we have, nothing anyone has. There will be some who choose to believe me, and there will be others who won't. But I'm confident in what I saw. But at the same time, I don't anticipate ever getting a satisfactory explanation for what happened.